What if the song that finally made REO Speedwagon famous was almost thrown in the trash? Written in the middle of the night from the pain of betrayal, it was dismissed by the entire band as too soft. Then the guitarist who hated it most plugged in his Les Paul and accidentally saved it. That one night produced a diamond-certified album and a #1 hit. But it also began destroying the band from the inside. This is the song that made REO Speedwagon legends, but changed them forever. Before REO Speedwagon became one of the biggest acts on the planet, they were just a band in a banged-up station wagon, chasing a dream across the frozen Midwest. They were formed in 1967 at the University of Illinois in Champaign by keyboardist Neil Doughty and drummer Alan Gratzer. From the very beginning, this was not a band with industry connections or well-placed friends. They had nothing but ambition and an almost reckless willingness to work. Their early years were built on fraternity parties, county fairs, and smoky bars scattered across Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. They played anywhere that would have them. The name came from a 1915 flatbed truck, utilitarian, American, and built for hauling heavy loads. That was REO Speedwagon in those early years. A working band, a blue-collar outfit grinding out miles and sets in equal measure. Their manager during those early days was a college classmate who later became one of the most powerful figures in the music industry, but at that moment was just another young man from Champaign, trying to figure it all out alongside them. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The arrival of guitarist Gary Richrath in 1970 changed the entire character of the band. Richrath was a Peoria native who had driven 100 miles just to see them play. He later said he was going to be part of that band whether they liked it or not. They liked it. His raw, blues-driven guitar work gave REO Speedwagon a ferocious edge it had previously lacked. Richrath became the band's musical engine, the source of the hard rock fury that would define their identity for the next decade and a half. The lineup around him shifted constantly. Singer Terry Luttrell departed in 1972, and a young vocalist named Kevin Cronin was brought in to record what became their second album. Cronin was a different kind of performer, more folk-influenced, more melodic, and less comfortable with the raw aggression that Richrath embodied. The tension was immediate and real. Cronin departed in 1973, and the band carried on with a singer named Mike Murphy, recording 2 albums that built their live reputation without quite breaking through commercially. Then, something remarkable happened. Fans in Indiana and the surrounding states began circulating petitions demanding the return of the singer from the second album. Thousands of signatures. A genuine grassroots movement driven by people who had seen REO Speedwagon in their local venues and formed a personal connection with Cronin's voice. The band listened. Cronin returned in 1976, and the classic lineup was finally assembled. Bass player Bruce Hall came aboard in 1977, replacing Greg Philbin, and the foundation was set. Their 1977 live album went platinum. Their 1978 studio effort went double platinum. The machine was running. But the breakthrough they truly wanted, the moment that would put them on the covers of national magazines and the top of the national charts, had not yet arrived. Kevin Cronin wrote "Keep On Loving You Alone" in the middle of the night, sitting at an electric piano. He was working through the pain of discovering that his wife had been unfaithful before their marriage. The emotion in the room was not romantic. It was raw and wounded. He channeled that pain directly into the chord progression, a shifting, yearning sequence that moved from F to G to A minor over a sustained bass note, a musical structure that felt, in his own description, like hope refusing to surrender to heartbreak. When Cronin brought the song to rehearsal at a studio in Los Angeles, the reaction from his bandmates was swift and dismissive. They called it too soft. They argued that a sensitive piano ballad had no place in the REO Speedwagon catalog. This was a band that prided itself on a hard, guitar-driven sound. A tender love song was not what they were supposed to be building. Gary Richrath's response to the song became one of the defining moments in the band's history. Out of what Cronin later described as possible frustration, Richrath plugged his vintage 1959 Gibson Les Paul directly into a Marshall double-stack amplifier with no effects pedals and played a solo that changed everything. The guitar tore through the room with a raw, aggressive power that Cronin had not anticipated. In that moment, Cronin recalled leaping from the piano bench. The combination of his emotional vulnerability and Richrath's uncompromising rock power was exactly what the song needed. The recording took place at 2 studios in the Los Angeles area. Producer Kevin Beamish worked with the band to capture that precise collision of tenderness and force. Backing vocalists Richard Page and Tom Kelly added layers of harmony that deepened the emotional texture of the track. Richrath's guitar work, his signature pinch harmonics, and what collectors called his harmonic chirps, gave the finished recording a sonic identity that was completely unlike anything else on the radio in 1980. The song sat right at the border between 2 worlds, and that border was exactly where a generation of listeners lived. The parent album was titled High Infidelity, a dark pun on both the high-fidelity audio standards of the era and the very personal betrayal that had inspired Cronin's most important song. It was released in November 1980 and was immediately embraced by radio programmers who sensed they were holding something special. Keep On Loving You hit #1 on the national singles chart in 1981. It was the first time REO Speedwagon had ever reached the top of the chart. The achievement was not simply a data point on a spreadsheet. For a band that had spent 14 years playing fraternity houses and county fairs, that moment represented the validation of every sacrifice, every mile, every night spent in a van on a frozen highway. They had finally arrived. High Infidelity spent 15 weeks at the top of the album's chart, making it the best-selling album in America for the entire year of 1981. The album eventually earned Diamond certification, with more than 10 million copies sold domestically and 20 million sold around the world. A second single from the album, the Richrath-written Take It on the Run, climbed to #5 on the singles chart, demonstrating that the album had more than one weapon in its arsenal. The commercial success was so massive that it even lifted the band's back catalog. Their 1978 album sold an additional 3 million copies in 1981 alone, driven entirely by listeners who had discovered REO Speedwagon through the new record. The rise of MTV amplified everything. The music video for Keep On Loving You became one of the early staples of the new network, introduced to audiences who were still figuring out what television music channels were supposed to be. For the first time, REO Speedwagon had a visual presence to accompany their commercial dominance. But the audience that arrived with this success was not the same audience that had stood in the front rows of those Midwestern clubs. The new listeners came because of the ballads. They came for the feeling of the love song, the emotional warmth of a track that felt safe and familiar. They were not looking for the extended jams and high-energy rock sets that had built the band's reputation across the previous decade. They wanted more of what they had heard on the radio. And the label, watching the numbers climb to heights that no one had predicted, wanted the band to give them exactly that. The commercial machinery of the early 1980s had no interest in what REO Speedwagon used to be. It cared only about what they had just become. And what they had just become was enormously profitable. The success of High Infidelity introduced a transformation that no one inside the band had fully anticipated, and none of them could stop. The first casualty was the fan base. The listeners who had followed REO Speedwagon through their long, grinding years in the Midwest felt a particular kind of loss. Their band, the one they had seen in sweaty clubs, the one they had believed in before the world was paying attention, had been handed to the mainstream. Cronin later acknowledged this directly, noting that their original American fans grew highly protective and resentful, feeling that their private rock and roll secret had been taken from them and shared with the entire pop world. The second transformation was internal. As the writer and primary voice of their biggest hit, Cronin's authority within the band grew substantially. This was not the result of any single confrontation or dramatic declaration. It was the natural consequence of results. The formula had worked. Cronin's melodic, emotionally direct songwriting had produced a Diamond-certified album, and both the label and radio programmers were unified in their demand for more of the same. The pressure on the follow-up album, released in 1982, was immense and immediate. The sessions were rushed. driven by a label hungry to capitalize on the previous year's extraordinary commercial performance. Rich Rath felt the shift acutely. His guitar-driven vision, the raw improvisation-heavy sound that had defined the band for more than a decade, was being gradually buried beneath synthesizers, polished production, and carefully crafted pop hooks. He grew frustrated with promotional decisions that he felt compromised the band's integrity, holiday television appearances, commercial partnerships, a cleaning up of the band's image that prioritized mainstream marketability over rock and roll authenticity. The band that had once prided itself on its gritty blue-collar identity was being repackaged for a broader, softer audience, and Rich Rath, the architect of that original identity, had no mechanism to reverse the direction. The creative partnership that had once powered the band was fracturing along a fault line that had always existed but had been contained by shared struggle. When survival was the shared mission, their differences were manageable. Now that success had arrived, those differences became a permanent source of conflict. The band that had once defined itself through the combined force of Cronin's melodic instinct and Rich Rath's raw guitar power was slowly being reduced to a single point of creative authority. That reduction was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and irreversible. Through the mid-1980s, REO Speedwagon maintained their commercial presence, but the internal dynamics continued to deteriorate. Their 1984 album produced another major hit with Can't Fight This Feeling, a Cronin ballad that climbed to #1 and extended the band's mainstream dominance. But for Rich Rath, each ballad-driven success felt like another step away from the music that had made them worth caring about in the first place. Rich Rath's battles with alcoholism worsened during this period. The creative stifling, the constant touring pressure, and the growing disconnect between his vision and the band's commercial direction created a private suffering that the audiences filling the arenas could not see. He had been the ferocious engine of the band's original identity, the player who had pushed Cronin's vulnerable piano ballad into something with real force, and now that engine was running on fumes. In September 1988, founding drummer Alan Gratzer made the decision to retire. He had spent 21 years behind the kit, and the relentless pace of life on the road had ground him down completely. He later described the experience of being away from home as a kind of imprisonment, with the hotel room door closing behind him feeling like a cell door thousands of miles from his family. With Gratzer gone, Neil Doughty became the sole remaining original member, aside from Rich Rath himself. Without the stabilizing presence of Gratzer, Rich Rath's situation inside the band became untenable. His alcoholism had reached a point where functioning at the level the band required was no longer possible. The creative and personal distance between him and Cronin had become a canyon. There was no longer any shared language between them. During the tour for what became the band's final album with the classic lineup, the situation collapsed entirely. In early 1989, following a tour of Hawaii, Gary Rich Rath departed REO Speedwagon. The guitarist who had driven 100 miles to join the band, who had plugged a vintage Les Paul into a Marshall stack and saved a song from obscurity, who had defined the sound of REO Speedwagon for nearly 2 decades, was gone. Dave Amato, a guitarist who had worked with Ted Nugent, was brought in as his replacement. Brian Hitt took over the drums. The band continued. But something essential had departed with Rich Rath, and the people who had followed REO Speedwagon since the beginning knew it. In the years that followed, REO Speedwagon functioned as a legacy touring act, playing the hits that audiences had loved and delivering polished, professional performances to arenas and amphitheaters across the country. Cronin led the band with discipline and commercial effectiveness, maintaining a presence on the touring circuit that most acts from their era could not sustain. But the band they had become bore only a surface resemblance to the raw, guitar-driven outfit that had spent the 1970s fighting for every inch of Midwestern territory. Gary Rich Rath attempted to continue working in music after his departure. He formed a band called Rich Rath and recorded a solo album, but his health challenges and ongoing struggles made a sustained comeback impossible. The creative fire that had once made him one of the most formidable rock guitarists in America was difficult to access through the weight of what he was carrying. He had given the band its identity, its teeth, its willingness to be loud when everything around it wanted quiet. That kind of contribution does not appear on a balance sheet, and it is rarely recognized until the person who made it is gone. Then, in December 2013, something happened that no one had expected. Central Illinois had been devastated by tornadoes, and REO Speedwagon and Styx organized a benefit concert in Bloomington to raise funds for the affected communities. On the night of the show, Kevin Cronin brought Gary Richrath out on stage. Richrath plugged a vintage Les Paul into an available Marshall amplifier and played Ridin' the Storm Out alongside his former bandmates for a sold-out crowd of 7,000 people. It was the last time they would share a stage. Gary Richrath passed away in September 2015 at the age of 65 due to complications from a stomach ailment. Cronin wrote publicly that he felt profound sadness, describing Richrath as a unique guitarist, a songwriter, and the embodiment of the tough guy with a heart of gold. REO Speedwagon continued performing and recording in the years following Richrath's passing, carrying a legacy that was inseparable from the song that had defined their commercial peak. In September 2024, the band announced that they would cease touring as REO Speedwagon, citing irreconcilable differences between Cronin and bass player Bruce Hall. Their final performance under the REO Speedwagon name took place in December 2024 in Las Vegas. It was the end of a journey that had begun in a college town in Illinois more than 50 years earlier. The irony embedded in the REO Speedwagon story is the kind that takes decades to fully understand. They spent 14 years fighting for the success that Keep On Loving You finally delivered. They earned every note of that success through relentless work, through years of driving frozen highways, through the kind of blue-collar determination that the song's audience instinctively recognized and respected. When the breakthrough came, it was real, and it was earned. But the same song that validated all those years of struggle also changed the terms of everything that followed. It brought a new audience that wanted something different from what the original fans had loved. It concentrated creative authority in a way that left Richrath, the engine of the band's hard rock identity, with diminishing space to operate. It created expectations that the band could only meet by moving further from their original selves. And the cumulative weight of those changes, over the course of a decade, cost the band the partnership that had given them everything. Without Keep On Loving You, there may never have been a legendary REO Speedwagon. Without the transformation that song set in motion, Gary Richrath might never have walked away. The song gave them immortality. The song cost them their identity. And in the end, those two facts were not separate truths. They were the same truth, seen from different angles. REO Speedwagon's story is a reminder that the greatest victories sometimes carry the highest prices. They fought for a decade to reach the top, and when they finally got there, the view was complicated. The music endures, the memories remain. But somewhere in the spaces between the big ballads and the sold-out arenas, the raw, blue-collar rock band that drove a station wagon across the frozen Midwest left the building and never quite came back. What is your favorite REO Speedwagon memory? Drop it in the comments, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories from rock's greatest era.